Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, listeners. I am so thrilled that you are here today, as I always am, and as redundant as it is, I have brought you another fantastic guest. We were just talking off air that I have a lot of people waiting to be a guest on the podcast. And when I see someone's story, I hone in and it just speaks to me. And of lately, it has been my Canadian friends, and I love my Canadian friends. And I think either I was there in a past life or I'm being called to go visit. So today is no exception, and I cannot wait for you to meet him. So today we're going to talk with Daniel Macqueen. So at 28 years old, Dan was leading a healthy, active life. After an optometrist appointment to identify the cause of his persistent headaches was cut short, he was handed a sealed envelope and told to go directly to the hospital. How terrifying. What followed was emergency brain surgery, and on June 21st, 2014, his reality was shattered by a devastating brain hemorrhage. With no map to guide him on the grueling path to recovery, Dan had to rely on his grit, perseverance, and resilience to relearn everything he once knew: how to talk, walk, and even smile. He battled through excruciating rehab exercises to rebuild his life and return to a job he loved. Now he wants to pay it forward, and through his talks, he's inspired so many groups, including the London Wolfson Rehabilitation Center, West London, a Brain Injury Association, and many, many more. And I think this is the key. The beauty of this podcast is showing you, no matter what it is, and we keep topping it, no matter what it is, you can overcome it and pay this thing forward. So I, without further ado, would love to introduce you to Mr. Dan Macqueen. Hi, honey. Good morning.
Hey, Maureen. How are you doing this morning?
So good. I'm full of energy. This is my get to every week, doing several or few, whatever it is. It's a get to, and to get to speak to you is such a privilege for me. So here on I Never Knew, but my dog did podcast, we start off with your story so the listeners understand the impact of what you've been through and what an achievement and accomplishment it is to share this with others. So let's start off with your knee story, which sounds like that trip to the optometrist, and I'll let you take it from there and tell us what you were experiencing.
Sure, Maureen. Thank you so much. Pleasure to be on the show. So I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what happened to me. Mine happened in jolly old London, England. I was living there, working in London, living my best life, lots of late nights, in my late 20s, ripping it up, having a good time. Started having these headaches that were getting really bad and persistently worse over a few weeks. I went to A&E, which is accident and emergency in the UK. Get some tests done. They thought it was vertigo. They sent me home. But, I went on the tube the next day afterwards, and, my vision blacked out. Like, I couldn't see. It's like, something's really wrong here. And I went back to A&E, and they thought, they ran the same test, and it looks like it's vertigo. Here's some pills. Like, this should sort you out. If it doesn't, you can always get your eyes checked with an optometrist. So the next day, the headaches were persistent as all ever. And the headaches came back with a ferocity I haven't experienced before, so I went to the optometrist appointment. I made an optometrist appointment. I was midway through the exam, and the optometrist, Mr. Patel, stopped the exam. He excused himself from the room, and he came back a few minutes later with a sealed envelope, and he gave it to me. He goes, "You need to go directly to Moorfields Hospital. which I did. Maureen, tell a lie. I stopped at home first to grab a Jack Reacher Oak by Lee Child, as I figured I'd need for to wait. A bite to eat and a phone charger. They ran the same test at Moorfields Hospital and escalated me up to Charing Cross Hospital. It turns out I had a dangerous buildup of pressure in my brain caused from a non-cancerous cyst in my head. Turns out I required emergency brain surgery tomorrow. Turns out my world's about to change altogether. So after a frantic back and forth with the folks in Canada, the last text message to my mom read like this. I'll see you soon, Mom. Think I'll have a new haircut next time I see you. Love, Dan. And that message is masking a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity. I was terrified. No one wanted to show. This could be curtains for me, right? Brain surgery? This doesn't sound good. So I wrote that message. It was on the operating table. My mom was in the air flying to London on June 21st, 2014. Something went horribly wrong. And I had a massive bleed in the brain, a brain hemorrhage. My mom lands and finds I'm in critical condition. I was in a coma for 4 weeks, but was in and out of consciousness for months after this. Things were dicey, touch and go. When all was said and done, I was learning how to walk, talk, and smile again. So this all kind of came to a head. That's a matter of 12 hours before, from diagnosis to you're having surgery to I'm in a coma to I'm incapacitated for 4 weeks. It was a pretty wild turn of events for me, to be honest, Maureen.
Oh, so traumatic. So traumatic. I mean, you don't get to prepare that. And as a mom, I can't even imagine, 28 is so young. This is not something, due to anything that you had done, and that's kind of the thing about our health is we can never take that for granted. And I think when you've been through what you've been through, you definitely learn that and pay that forward. So gosh, 4 weeks in a coma, having to learn all of this stuff. And that probably just took so much time. Did you ever, and this is a sort of a existential question, did you ever feel anger and say, why me?
Look, I'll be honest, there definitely an issue that did cross my vibe. And I was like, what, this is not fair. This happened to me. You're right. It's not fair. But I quickly realized being woe's me, why me, that's not going to get you anywhere forward because it has to happen to someone. And it just happened to me. And that card came up and you can whinge about the card or you can play the hand. And I quickly realized what, it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. And that wasn't an instant I'll just be a stoic recovery person from this moment onwards. It took me a few days to get around this vibe, probably a few weeks to be honest, but it quickly became apparent that was the way through, that the way through was not woe's me, but the way through was hey, this happened. How can I make steps to progressively get myself better? Wishing something did not happen is not an active way to resolve it or improve your lot. Acceptance, which is tough to hear because accept it, just accept it. That's tough to hear. And believe me, it was tough as all hell to hear this or understand that. But if you don't accept what happened to you, you can't take steps to resolve it or take steps to improve your lot. I could whinge for 6 months and then accept it and then take steps forward from that day forward, but then I'm losing 6 months of my life about whinging. If you accept it and take steps quickly to resolve it or improve your lot, you're taking gains, you're making progress, you're being proactive here. You're not being woe's me about the victim spiral. You're taking steps to improve your lot. And that's my talks are all about that, about acceptance and and choosing to go forward with what you've got. Because you can't wish it didn't happen. It's not an active way to resolve what happened to you. It's you got to kind of accept it. And, as tough as that is to hear, if you can accept it, you can improve it. If you can't accept it, you can't improve it, if that makes sense, Maureen.
Oh my gosh, 1,000,000%. I mean, as a life coach, that's everything. And my goals for every single, person that comes across my path is, that cycle of having the victim mentality. We're just going to play that tape over and over in the insanity cycle of doing the same thing, expecting different results. And everyone on this podcast who knows me, either personally or professionally, or has listened for any length of time knows that I always say the two things we need in life most are acceptance and validation. But I love that you say that about acceptance. Listeners, I know you're going, yeah, Maureen, acceptance, I get it. But you're right. There's a path to acceptance too. And it's processing how we get to the place where, do I have control over this thing? And once I do or feel I can, then I've accepted it. And then I take steps. I love what you said. Wishing, and I'm writing as we speak, wishing something didn't happen is not an active way to resolve it. That's a beautiful statement.
Yeah, that's and that's full send believing that. Like that, I can tell you from experience, like it's not fair this happened to me, right? It's not fair. But you got to ask yourself a question after that, and then that's, and what? And what do you expect to have happen now? Well, this never happens to Scott or Nick or Jeff or Cody. Like, this doesn't happen to these guys. Like, okay, and? Well, why does it happen to me? Well, it did. And? Eventually you run out of ands. Eventually you run out of you're running out of ands here, and like, okay, cool, well, then what, bud? What are you expecting to have happen now? Like, you can't, it's not fair it happened to you, but and what? Eventually you just go, have to kind of rubber meets the road here, and you got to kind of move on with stuff. Like, it's not fair it happened, yeah, but like, the faster you get to acceptance, the faster you can improve your lot. And I really believe that what you said is very true, Maureen. So that's very, very on point.
Yeah. And I think back to my life of, when those things happened, when someone was mistreating me or I was being abused or whatever it was, and being in the victim mentality was, they did this to me. This is my hand. I got to deal with it. Or I used to say this all the time, bad things come in threes. So I'm like setting myself up for the next bad thing that happened. That mindset never, ever serves us, guys. It just doesn't. No. I love you run out of ands. Like, in that moment in my life, I could have said, yeah, this person's abusing me. And then I asked myself the next question. Are you okay with it? Yes, no. And I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that in my coaching. So obviously it wasn't a straight line from this surgery, the brain hemorrhage, the coma, to all of a sudden we have this beautiful man in front of me saying, I'm out here speaking to everybody. There's obviously going to be, it's a windy road. So those moments of going, maybe having setbacks, tell us about some of those.
Yeah. So that's funny that you mentioned that, because I've had quite a few setbacks. My recovery is like a W shape. So the first setback's down here. After a year of working with rehab, vocational therapy, occupational therapy, learning how to walk, talk, and smile again, I made it back to work. 2 half days a week, arduous, difficult, like grinding stuff. I'm not doing much. I'm like reading some emails. I'm not doing much here. But getting back in the vibe and being part of the office culture again was quite big. I used to work at Hootsuite in London, which was a great company. They did so right by me. I got lots of love for the company, like lots of love for Hootsuite. After 2 months being back in the office, after a year of being from the brain injury, a year back, a year later pretty much, I had a second setback. And by setback, I mean I was found unconscious by flat by my mom. The shunt that was in my head had blocked, leading to hydrocephalus, or water on the brain. Pretty serious business, resulted in an ambulance ride, another bad haircut, and a new medical alert bracelet, which I still wear to this day. Gets caught in my swimming stuff every day. So I woke up in the hospital a year later to hear the beeping noise of the heart rate monitor going off. Beep, beep, beep. What happened? What happened? What happened? Dan, you got a second emergency brain surgery. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, we got the blockage, but you're back in the hospital. I go, well, all my progress was washed away. Well, we got the blockage. But I've been working for a year to get back to work, and I was just getting this behind me. Like, not even behind me. I was just like getting to grips with like my new life, my new vibe. And I have a second emergency brain surgery. I was gutted by this. And the carpet was ripped from underneath my legs, and I was just on the floor, scrambling to get back to life. I had already done rehab in person, so I wasn't entitled to do that. My mom had to fight tooth and nail to get me back in rehab from a remote hospitality. And this was the darkest time of my life. The first setback was a joke compared to this, because all the support's there, you're in rehab, it's all like, oh, this is a new setback, let's help you get back on your feet down. But the second setback's like, you've already been working for a year to get back to this. And then we're just going to rip the carpet underneath your legs when you get back to work. And now, how are you going to do that, bud? How are you going to handle that curveball? And that was, I don't talk about how dark that was, but that was the darkest period of my life. I don't think I was ever depressed, to be honest, Maureen, but like I was definitely down this pity spiral for a little bit there, for sure. I was definitely down the pity spiral for a little while, and like thinking, well, this isn't fair. Like this bad thing already happened, and you're giving me the second card again. Well, what's going on with this? And I had to fight tooth and nail to keep my mindset pure. The mindset was everything here, because like, whether or not you think it's the worst or the best, you're in your head, and you're in a like, it's going to become what you think it is. So it took me about a week to be down in the dumps and then understand, you know what, maybe this isn't the worst thing, because I've already done rehab, so I know how to build back and rehab my vibe better. I know how to improve my law. I know how to do vocational therapy better. I know how to do occupational therapy better. Physiotherapy, I know how to do that better. I can walk this time. It wasn't as far down the dumps as it was in the past, but like, this flattened me. And it took every ounce of my belief and my thought to like get through this process, and a lot of help to get through this. Like my mom was phenomenal through this process, but this was real dark here. And like, it wasn't on a straight line at all. This is more like a W shape that I was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. You had the double H's, what I call double H's, the hopeless and the helpless. And those two things bring us into despair, and then despair brings us into depression, and even, that suicidal ideation and that feeling that I'm not going to be able to get through this. I love so much that what you did, and this is key in life, listeners, this is so, so key, is the reframe where how devastating there's a saying, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. That's where Dan was. And the reframe that I love most of all, and I have to remind myself of I do this to myself all the time too. I coach the coach, is you started looking at what you had versus what you hadn't. So I think that was crucial for you. And it's your character and your spirit and your soul that is that resilient person that says, man, I went through this terrible thing once, and now I can't believe I'm having to redo all of this. And you said, nope. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remember the things I can do. And I just, your spirit, your resilience, your gripping want to come out of this better is so apparent.
It took everything to hold on to that mindset. Like, I was hanging on by my fingernails. I wasn't sure I'd make it out of this second setback, to be honest. I was holding on to my fingernails, hoping that it breaks, then eventually it breaks. Just a little bit at first, but it breaks enough that you can see a little bit of light creeping through. And then more the second day, more the third day, and then like before you know it, like, it's just one step at a time. One step at a time. You take the next step. I say, like, there's this quote I love. I'm using it on my talks a lot. It's about taking the next step. I can't see a way through. This is the book from the horse, the mole, the fox, and the horse. The boy. Excuse me, I butchered that name entirely. But the boy screams back to the horse. He goes, I can't see a way through the thick forest. And the horse goes, can you see the next step? And the boy goes, yeah. And the horse goes, well, then just take that. Because when you take that next step, maybe it opens up for you. But like that is so key for everything I've gone through in my life, is just like, just take the next step. Where's the space you get? Well, you can see the next step. I can't see a whole way back to recovery. Like, if you told me, like, after the second recovery, I'd be a motivational speaker based in Vancouver, Canada, what I've got in front of me now, I would have laughed in your face. So there's no way I'm getting back there. But I have gotten back there. But I got there one step at a time. I call that getting to work, chop wood, carry water. And that's just focusing on what you can control, what you can do, what you can actually put your hands to work with. But like, the next step and focusing on what you can control is so key for this. And like, that's everything.
Yes. And I think what we do which is completely normal as humans, is what we do is we look at this big long range goal out there, and that's what stops us from taking just that next step, because it seems so overwhelming. And like with my clients, I'll say, please don't look at the mountain, let's just look at the first step on the trail. And every step that you take on that trail, finally you're going to be at the top going, hey, wait a minute. And I get where you're completely like, if someone would have said this, there's no way I would have called you crazy. And I relate and resonate with that so much. I never aspired to be a writer or a motivational speaker or even a life coach. I mean, my life was a mess, and to think that I'd be helping other people with their life is just, you can't fathom that, that back then. And so that's a really good thing to really share with you listeners, is the fact that just because you can't see it now does not mean it won't happen. But don't base everything you're doing on that big giant goal, like destination happiness. That's a big thing. It's a journey. And so you recover from, you go through a ton of rehab the second time around. What moves you and inspires you to share your story?
I had a lot of help, Maureen, and like a lot of help to get back to where I'm at today. My company was phenomenal. My mom often says the doctor saved my life, but Hootsuite allowed me to get my life back. My mom and dad came over from Vancouver to be in London for like 2 years to help me rehab. Friends came to visit me in London from Vancouver. Friends in London were phenomenal as well. I had a lot of help, and I struggled so mightily. And like I was hanging on my fingernails in this process. And if you don't have that help, you don't have the support you have, then you're finished. But if I can show you the way, if I can show you the compass is key, because the compass is what I want to show you, like mindset, perspective. If you can get that in your vibe, then you can accomplish anything you want. Like anything I can throw you, you can navigate your way through, because we're giving the compass. And the mindset's key with this, right? Like it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. All these are like whimsical sayings about like Stoic philosophy, kind of like control the controllables, but it's just real. It's true. It's lively. It's real truth. If you don't have that help, then maybe you don't get back to where I'm at today. If I can give you the compass, then maybe you can navigate this yourself. And like that's why I'm driven to help you succeed, because I don't want you to go through what I did. And if you don't have the help, then you're never gonna get back to where I'm at today. So like I want to give you that keys right now if I can. Be like, hey, here's the keys. Take it on if you can. It's a deep passion within me, and it's a deep desire for me to help give back and kind of pay it forward, if it makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And so listeners, the key that I hear here is, and it's tough because not everybody does have that kind of support, but find support groups. It doesn't have to be immediate family, but there are these support groups like Dan has inspired at, the rehabilitation centers. And also, let's pay it forward. When you hear Dan's story, think about, what can I do to support someone going through it, whether it's an online group or whether it's just volunteering somewhere. It helps us to help one another. And I love that. So you talk about life hacks, and I want to know what are some of the key life hacks when we run up against, and whether it's a health issue or whether it's a financial loss or whether it's maybe even an addiction or whatever it is. What are some really good life hacks? I love the ands, and I love the wishing something didn't happen is not an active way to resolve it. Let's build on that. What are your life hacks for us?
Sure. Well, like let's start with what's vibrating on my table right now. One of these. Everyone's got one of these, right? A phone by their side at all times, right? What I'm saying is use the phone to help you navigate the world. So set alarms. What do I mean by setting alarms? Well, if you remember something you wanted to do, or like an idea you have in the nighttime, write it down and set your alarm. For like a time you're not busy. So like, let's say 4 p.m. today. Follow up with Maureen from the podcast today. And I mentioned this quote that you can post on her social media account. Something like this, right? You set the alarm so you know to do it at that time. When the alarm goes off on your phone, check the notes, see what it is about. Make the phone work for you. Allow it to do some heavy lifting for you. The second one for the phone is set timers. So if you're doing like before bed, you'll scroll Instagram for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But set a timer for 15 minutes so you don't go over that time frame. Or like do a book for 15, 30 minutes. Set the timer so when it stops, it will end, and you're not going to waste the whole time watching and scrolling this crap. But like stuff like this kind of allows your life to be a bit lighter and easier than it was in the past. I'll share another one with you, Maureen, about walking in London, if you don't mind. Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely, please do.
So this is one I call constructive optimism. This is probably my best hack that I've got, to be honest. At least I think it is. So Tooting Broadway is an area in South London, all right? For your listeners, I'll just set the scene for you. It's an area they call up and coming. So think loud sirens, drugs, gangs. It's dirty, it's hectic, it's busy. I'm learning to walk in Tooting Broadway after 4 months in a wheelchair, okay? Walking with a cane, I'm walking with an eye patch, I'm Bambi on ice. I turned the corner to walk on Tooting Broadway for the first time. Immediately get slammed into by someone. I stagger back a few feet. Someone scurries past me on the right-hand side. I thought I was done with the rats. Someone had been stabbed on the sidewalk back here. I'm thinking, this is a pretty wild place to know to walk. After a few days of this, I was like, this is the worst place to know to walk in the world. Can't they see I'm trying to walk here? Can't they see I'm trying here? And then one day my perspective shifted. Maybe this isn't the worst place to know to walk in the world. Maybe this is the best. If I can walk here, I can walk anywhere. Now, Tooting Broadway didn't change, right, Maureen? We went from the worst to the best in my mind, and my mood reflected that. What are you looking at in your life you're convinced is the worst? Convinced is the absolute worst. Hey, maybe it is. Maybe you can find a way to turn down the suck a little bit. You can find a way to shift that perspective a little bit. Iron Mike Tyson famously said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Now, your punch may not be a brain hemorrhage, but it will be a brain injury, a job loss, a diagnosis for your loved one, a breakup. How will you handle that punch? What I'm offering is a compass, not a map, but a compass that always points towards the true north. Allows you to navigate these ways in a special vibe. When you change the way you look at the world you look at changes. And you don't need a brain hemorrhage to refocus that. So that's what I call constructive optimism, just that little story about walking in Tooting Broadway. You can see like understand the perspective shifting of like how the way you look at the world changes everything, right? Like the worst, the best. And like that permeates your vibe because you relish the opportunity to walk in this area because you're getting better by this, right? It's not the worst, it's the best. But when it is the worst, you don't want to go walk in there. This sucks. I don't want to go here. This is the worst. When I do want to walk there, it's like, well, bring it on. What do you got? This is all you got? Bring it on. And that the vibe changes everything.
Oh,
rant for you, Maureen.
So much goodness. The irony of this is today on my Facebook, and you need to connect with me, everyone, on my personal page. And I also posted this on Instagram and LinkedIn today. I posted the my life coaching tip of the week is non-substance addiction. And that is the addiction to electronics, and that we get lost in this world as an escapism. It's still an addiction because it's something that it takes us away from things, and then we have guilt. And my first suggestion was to set a timer. So I'm like, we are so in the same vibe. So that I love so much. Turn down the suck. Okay, listeners, if you take nothing else, I just want you to take away, turn down the suck. I agree with you. And here's something that got me out of that victim mentality as well, was under the constructive optimism, which I love that title so much, that label, was this. I recognized, rather than focusing on my problems and then feeling like people are bumping into me or being rude or treating me bad, I was able to turn that around. And I even write about that in my book. My first book, My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am. I write about when you're cut off in traffic, instead of being mad that you're cut off in traffic, say, oh, I bet you that person is really late and maybe this is their last chance. They're going to get fired and they're a single parent. Like, I started putting myself in other people's perspectives, or just even imagining a story that may or not have been true, but it helped me to be less offended, take things less personal, and realize the world runs on So, everyone is just in their own world trying to make this life as good as they possibly can. And they're not intentionally trying to hurt one another. Now, there are people that try to intentionally hurt, but those are, more, that's a whole nother podcast, maybe on a crime podcast. But I really agree with you. The perspective change. Love that you said, if I can walk here, I can walk anywhere. And I always try to help clients with I call it the best and worst scenario. So think about when you're going through something, you can say, what could be worse than this? Well, this could happen. Well, this could happen. And then you sort of look at where you are and you're like, well, that's not that bad because it could be a lot worse. So I just so much of that and coming from someone who, that struggle is real health wise. I think health struggles, this is something I think listeners, the conflict is real when you have health struggles. I was recently in the hospital, the emergency room, literally like 3 days ago, with some health issues, and it was sudden and my body was just excruciating pain. You can't will it away. I couldn't mindset that away. I couldn't will it away. And so that's a tough place where you were to say, I can reframe. I can look at what I have. How can you help life hack when people are in either chronic pain or these sudden health issues? How can you maybe get out of the physical and more into the mental peace that you need?
Well, that's a good point you bring up, Maureen. Like, first of all, I'm glad to hear you back sitting in front of me now. I'm glad you're out of the hospital now, so that's very good to hear. That's scary to be in the hospital. It's never a good time.
Nope.
But when you're fighting for your next one, these whimsical lines are going to come to you like, oh, this is all about control the controllables and it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it. Like, this is not like what's going through your head. You're thinking about survival. Yeah. So don't think like, I got to come up with a whimsical line. Like, Dan had all these lessons from his experience. What's my lesson? Like, don't worry about the lesson. The lesson comes way down the road, years later. And the time you're like, I want to survive. But you got to fight for it. And if you don't fight for it, you got to fight for it. That's the main thing. You got to fight for it to the end, the bitter end. Hang on by your fingernails. But like, don't expect it to be like, well, what's the lesson here? Like, don't worry about the lesson at the time. Like, just survive, man. Just get through it. And I've got all these whimsical sayings now and perspectives now that I've learned from the experience. And like, but that's looking back at it. At the time, I'm like, how can I make it through this experience? I remember being in the hospital in the ICU overnight and being like, telling my buddy Andrew, like, Andrew, this is a wild place at night. Because I stayed there overnight in like this big room with like maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 people. People are wailing away, crying. You got to take all these drugs to like medicate yourself. And man, this is a wild spot at night, man. Like, people are crazy here. And he's like, what do you mean, Dan? It was just like, it's like the inmates have taken over the asylum at nighttime. It's just like people are crying, screaming, and people running around. It's just chaos. And it's like, if you think about it, like, well, this is kind of a wild time to be here. Like, this is kind of a wild perspective. Like, I'm kind of scared. I'm kind of awakened. I'm kind of like alert what's happening. I don't know, but like, it's not a forever place. It's a for right now place. And I kind of just embrace the moment of like, well, this is an experience. And that sounds a bit light and a bit trivial, but like, it allowed me to navigate that space and get through the difficult time by looking at it like, well, this is an experience for right now. It's not forever, but it's for right now. So just not embrace it, not enjoy it, but embrace it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Because everything that we're going through, and people, I know you don't always like it when I say this, but everything we're going through is something that we needed to be able to learn from or help others. And we're either learning it or teaching it. And I really believe that is our purpose here. We've asked for something to raise our vibration or to evolve us in our knowledge and our experiences. And I agree. And I don't think it's trivial at all. So this is, and I'm going to try not to go off on a soapbox on this. What I loved was that you knew something was wrong with you. And I have very much frustration with the medical community. And this is not a critical thing to the medical community. It is that we definitely need some advancements, and we need We need patients to be better advocated and heard. And I think we know our bodies better than everyone else, but I think the medical community can get overwhelmed. And then they want to put you in the standard of what they've seen the other 100 patients who've come in with the same thing as you. What I love is that when you went in for those headaches and then they sent you home, you knew there was something more to that, even though the test said, nothing, just go home here, just take this medication. What do you think is a good way to advocate for ourselves? I'm a believer in second opinions and third opinions and 20 opinions. If you need to, you have a right to say, I know my body and I know something's going on. What do you think? What's a good thing for our listeners?
I think like just trust your gut. Like if you think something's wrong, something's wrong. Like it is simple as that. Like, remember, I came back to Vancouver a couple of years ago from London. And I went swimming and I got like an ear infection. And I like told my dad, I'm like, I've got an ear infection. I need to go to the hospital. Or I can go to the doctor to get some medication for this because I'm going away for a wedding. So are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I got an ear infection for sure. So they ran the tests. Guess what? I had an ear infection. I'm so attuned down to my body, what it needs and what's wrong with it. Like I can kind of pick out what's wrong with the stuff and like understand what's happening here. But like trust your gut 100%. I'd love to share my worst and best medical experience in the hospital if you don't mind, Maureen.
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Oh, please do.
I'll start with the worst and end with the best because like I don't want to end on a downer. It's pretty funny because I give this in my talks and I've got this slide that's a whole bunch of pictures and it's represented by like each picture is a story. And the worst memory is Brussels sprouts. Shock! This is gonna be a conflicted opinion I've got on Brussels sprouts. Many of your listeners are probably not going to like me after this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it because I believe this with my whole heart. My whole heart, I believe this. Brussels sprouts are the worst vegetable ever created. The worst. And I stand by that decision. And it represents the worst memory I had in the medical space. Okay, so hear me out before you go judge me on the Brussels sprouts vibe, because like who knows? I was getting my eyes checked to the optometrist, okay? After the brain injury, I was all wonky, and she goes, look at her pen, watch the pen, drag it down, but don't move your head, please. And I go, well, I can't really look further much down that because I've got double vision. When that goes away, I should be able to see that just fine. And she goes, oh, that's not going to go away. And I go, excuse me? Yeah, the double vision is not going to go away. But I never heard that before. I never knew this was not going to go away. And she's just telling me like I should just know this. And I was devastated. Like it was a punch to the gut. It even hurts now thinking about it now as being told that like so casually. So just like so blasé. I gave these interviews to my medical doctors, first year medical doctors in the UK, which are like 18 years old because they're right out of high school in medical school in the UK. And they asked me what was the worst experience you had in the hospital. And I told them this, and I said, never, ever, ever treat your patients as a patient first and a person second. Always, always, always treat them as a person first and a patient second. She made the mistake of treating me as a patient first and a person second. That was the worst experience, okay? Patient first, person second. Double vision. That's the worst memory I've had. Brussels sprouts, they're horrible. The second story I want to share is the best experience I had in the hospital, which was me and my Dr. Jens Foles, my GP. I had to get a GP after the hospital. It was Dan Macqueen. I was with my dad and I had a cane and an eye patch, and it was a packed waiting room, right? I'm walking over to him. I go, yep, over here. Walking over him, limping away on my cane. He goes, Dan, I read your file. And my file was 2 of these, right, Maureen? 2 of these, big, thick files. And he goes, I thought you'd be a wreck. I'm walking over to him. Jens, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But that one interaction indicated the relationship that Jens and I had, and just showcased the person first and a patient second. A person first and a patient second. You can tell me the worst news in the world. If you treat me as a person first and a patient second, hey, I'll listen to it. Treat me as a patient first and a person second, hey, jog on. I got no time for you. I don't respect your opinion or your perspective at all. Jens I love, this is a lady I hated. Now, that kind of shows you the yin and the yang of the medical experience. But like a person first and a patient second is so key for any practitioners out there in the medical space. Always vibe this way, and your patients will at least respect what you have to say.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. I've had, well, first of all, I started in nursing and I worked in the medical field for 30 plus years. So I know the other side and how you can have more compassion and you can get the job done and do the clinical things, but you can still have the compassion, which is why I finally just quit it and said, I need to do life coaching because I have too much empathy to be in that environment, that clinical of a medical environment. And for me, it was person first, patient second. And so I love everything about that. And the thing is I hope we have some medical professionals listening. And if we do, it means you're very empathetic, which you have to be in the medical field, I think, anyway. But I think what's really important here that we are missing in not only the medical diagnosing or the medical field in every aspect is listening. We are not stats. We are not, for instance, I have chronic rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis, but I'm young. Look at me. I'm full of energy. I move around. I do stuff. It doesn't mean I don't have chronic pain. So I walk into like a rheumatologist and they see, like your doctor, oh, I thought you'd be a wreck. They see me looking just fine and healthy, and I'm not walking with a cane. I'm not whatever. They can't believe what I'm saying about my body. And I think it's insulting. And I think in the ERs, their main goal is to eliminate, not solve, and it is to get you in and out as soon as possible by any means. And it's frustrating because I feel we are not being heard. And when you feel you aren't being heard in any area of life, you feel dismissed and you feel devalued. And so for me, that's the takeaway is we have to advocate for ourselves. We have to say, I understand you have the expertise, but you don't have the expertise in my body. I'm the expert of my body. And I'm telling you, this is what's going on. Do you think that's a good advice?
That's very good advice.
So you say that we're going to leave it all down, or we don't leave things as a downer here on I Never Knew. First of all, we've got a few more minutes, but I have a little segment and then we're going to let you share everything you have going on and where people can contact you. So my little segment is, how weird are you? And I have a question, actually before the segment. Did you lose anything from having your brain aneurysm? Did you lose anything that you had before? And what I mean is, did you, besides your hate for Brussels sprouts, which, yes, I'm very offended. It's the only thing we're going to differ on this podcast is I freaking love my Brussels sprouts. So,
More for you, more for you, more for you.
That's right. Send them my way. Judge me all you want. But, I'm a gourmet chef, so I can make them taste really good. I bet you I could make you eat them. I bet you I could.
I don't care how you make them, how you slice them, how you dice them. I don't want your Brussels sprouts. Thank you very much. You can have them yourself.
See, that's a mindset. That's a mindset. We can reframe that. No, I'm just kidding. But did you lose anything like that? Because I would think, there's a lot of areas that would be affected, and, there's going to be our likes and dislikes and our taste buds and stuff. So did anything like really shift for you? Like, I liked this before and now I can't deal with this at all afterwards?
Yeah, I'd say like with the brain injury, you're never out of the woods, right? I say I'm about 75% of where I was before. It may look like 100%, but I'm about 75% with the battery, with everything, with my vibe, 75% of where I was before. And below 50, I'm less pleasant. Below 30, I'm a bit of a prick. The battery drains much faster than it did before, and I have to recharge it by taking naps or meditating or recharging the battery up to 100% or 75%.
Oh.
But the battery drains much faster than it did before, and I have to be really respectful of the battery. I've got a Whoop strap, which is like a little strap you wear to tell you how you slept. It tells you how you're feeling, really. But it's how you rested and like how you strained for the day to kind of gauge the battery levels you can go with for the day. But with the brain injury, I've got for sure some lingering stuff like fatigue's a big issue. bit impulsive, bit direct. The filter's not there. Like it's not out of the woods. I still walk with a bit of a weird gait. I still see double, so I have double vision still, which means I see two of you, which Maureen, let me tell you, fantastic. When I'm looking at some people, it's not the best, but for you, it's fantastic. But it's like an adjustment, right? And I had eye surgery on the eye last month or 2 months ago. And it's quite frustrating because it's changed. My vision the whole time was like this, right? For 9 years, it was like this. After the eye surgery, it's like this. But it's a new vibe entirely, right? And I've had to get used to the new vision. My dad asked me, like, Dan, do you regret having eye surgery? And I rattled off a quick response, like, yeah, of course, it's changed everything. It's changed everything. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, like, you know what? I don't regret it because I took a shot with the diagnosis, the measurements. It wasn't 100%, but I took a shot. I was willing to risk it. And it's that mindset that I want to always keep in my front of mind, like take the next step. That the next step we talked about that story, always take the next step. The next step was take the surgery. Now it's shifting my vision a little bit like this. Still see two of you, which is unfortunate, but that mindset, that belief of always taking the next step is what I want to always reinforce. I always want to take that next step. And I'm so glad I took the next step because it will unfold and it'll take maybe months, years to relocate back to normal and be comfortable with the vision now. But I'm always going to take that next step no matter what, because better than yesterday is one of the quotes I always live by. Better than yesterday is how I want to improve my life. I had eye surgery on the right eye, and that improved the eyes quite a lot. I can move around a lot more with the eye. I could track stuff with the eye a lot better. Left eye, not so much. So it's an adjustment, it's a vibe, but it's like, I'm not in the woods by any stretch, Maureen, but it's, I'm taking the next step every time, every chance I can get. Every chance I can get, I'll take the next step for sure.
Yeah, better than yesterday. What a wonderful mantra. I love mantras. I always tell my clients we got to come up with a mantra for you. And it is something that is just a repetitive reminder to ourselves that it's this too shall pass. This next step, this next thing, and it doesn't stay this way forever. We're energy, we're flowing. We're not meant to stay in the same place for an entire lifetime. So if we and not to be like, again, lightening it too much and saying, you know what, you'll get through it, and just telling ourselves that gives us that will to take those next steps. So I love that a lot. Okay. So now we're going to go to, how weird are you? And this can be whether it's related to your brain injury or not, but this is just like personality, idiosyncrasies, strange things that we do, that your family would say that's really strange. And I had one for today that I was going to give you an example on. So maybe since we talked Brussels sprouts, I'll give you my weird thing. The weirdest thing I've ever eaten was when I was pregnant with my second child, and I ate almost every day sardines and sour cream together, which is repulsive to me now.
That's a pretty wild vibe, I'm not gonna lie to you. But I mean, hey, you got cravings, you gotta go with the cravings, right?
Right. I'll blame it on her. And this is funny because out of all three of my children, they're all adults now. They're 33, 31, and 20, almost going to be 25 in October. Out of all three of the kids, she's the one that will try any food. She loves food. She eats crazy things like I do. She'll try anything. So maybe there's something to that. Just, I'm just saying I could be thanked for that. I should tell her you really need to thank me for that. So what's your weird thing? And it could be something like you clean the house 10 times a day, or, what's your weird thing?
Well, I'd say I'm full of quirks, Maureen. I have a very rigid morning routine that I follow every day. Like I have to do that to boot up my sequence for the day. I love winding down the night by cleaning the kitchen, being very cathartic and rhythmic to kind of clean the kitchen and get myself set up for success the next day. Meditation to be part of my vibe, which is probably a bit of a weird one. I don't know. My parents would probably say that's a bit not weird, but like I'm just much more attuned to my own battery levels than I was in the past. So I'm quite respective and like it's always, no matter what, I'll stop what I'm doing and like take a break. So very like attuned with my own vibe, I guess you could say. Because I've failed many times in the past, and I've learned through failure. I've learned by pushing through and being like, oh, just push through, I can make it through this. It's no big deal. But when you fail with fatigue levels, that's pretty embarrassing because like sometimes you'll just snap or like say something you don't mean. Or literally just like not collapse, but like just turn into a puddle on the floor or on the couch and just you can't handle it. Like I gotta respect that battery above anything else. So I'm full of quirks these days, Maureen, but it's I'm learning to like adapt my vibe now and respect like my battery levels now, and that's like been an ongoing thing. So I can't say one, but I've got many that are quite unique and interesting. But the battery level is probably the biggest one, and that's one that I had respect all the time.
Yeah, I don't think any of those are weird. That's not even on the weird scale. But what I do think is cool about you is your snarky sarcasm that I absolutely resonate with. My weird, I guess, thing that people might not understand, and I think you share this with me, is saying something that, because I have no filter either. I am high functioning autism and ADHD. So I don't have a lot of filters. So I say what's on my mind. And especially when it's an uncomfortable situation, I'll be that one that like says something that makes you laugh, under my breath or, and I feel like you share that snarky sarcasm with me because first of all, when you said in your bio, which I loved so much, nothing like a brain hemorrhage to refocus your mind. I mean, I knew you were my guy. I was like, that's the kind of thing that I would say. So I think we're a little odd in that way because a lot of people try to be so, I don't know, appropriate, I guess, politically correct. I don't know.
Well, the dark sense of humor is what helped me navigate the space and like I talk about this brain hemorrhage like it's nothing because I've earned the right to kind of talk about this in like a disrespectful tone. And every chance I get, I talk about it like it was nothing, like it was a joke. What a joke this brain hemorrhage was, thinking you could get me. That's all you got, bud. And I speak about it in such a belittling, like disrespectful tone because I've earned the right to speak to it that way. It wasn't easy. Don't make it seem like it was easy to do this, but like I don't want to give this thing any clout, any light, any like gravitas it doesn't deserve. You ain't nothing, brain hemorrhage, and like I want to let you know, like I've navigated this, and like that's all you got, bud. Bring it on, man.
Yeah.
And like I've got that dark sense of humor in me. Like I'm gonna disrespect you and talk about you, talk down you every chance I can get because guess what? I overcame you. I navigated this space. Like it was so. Like to be quite frank, Maureen, like I didn't think I'd make it through this a few times. Like they didn't think I'd make it through this at all. The doctors were like, he may not make it through this at all. Like they told my parents that. They told me my parents I couldn't speak for the first few weeks, and the tracheotomy ruffled up my vocal cords, and they told my parents, he may not be able to speak again. The way the nurse got me speaking again, she took me down to the park. Some kids playing football across the park. She goes, Dan, those kids are off the park. They don't think you're good enough to talk, Dan. They don't think you're good enough to talk. And I kind of realized that, that's a trigger for me. I realize that now, and I yelled some profanities across the park that, you know what, I found my voice. And how dare you think I can't talk, you mother.
I love it.
I realize it's a kind of a trigger for me, right? But like, it's that dark, twisted sense of I'm going to prove you wrong that's allowed me to navigate this space in a way I'm always chasing it right now, right? And that's like, I always tell people, don't judge your motivation. It could come from a dark place, come from a happy place. Don't judge motivation. Harness it and ride that wave because the wave's there. I did this test a little while ago, Maureen, for the Brain Injury Clinic, and I'm going off piece here. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
With the Brain Injury Clinic in Surrey, it's like world renowned. And they ran some brain scans on me, and like the results came back as very average, which like the practitioner was very like, this is a great brain scan, very average for your age group. I'm like, well, that's great. Okay, cool. For 2 brain injuries, that's pretty good. I'll be honest, average is pretty good. But I viewed it as you're shockingly average, Dan. Shockingly average. I was expecting some big outliers, some big spikes and big lows. My brain is shockingly average for my age range, which is pretty good. Which tells me that the reason why I've been so successful is my mindset's been so pure. My mindset's been everything. I've been nose over the toes of my board, riding this wave down, this cascading wave down. like I can harness that and make that work, which means that I'm no better than you. Which means no smarter or no more gifted than anyone else here. I've just chosen to go forward. I've leaned into this mindset full stop. Like I'm just leaning into this right now, and that's why I've been able to be successful. But that means you can do it too, which is pretty empowering as well. Like it means I'm no better than you. It means I've chosen to go forward. I've leaned into this mindset full hog. Bit of a rant there for you, Marie, but there you go.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that because most of the people that all of the guests that I've interviewed that have overcome something, the most resilient people are spicy and sassy. And I think there's that is a character thing that is like so beautiful, where you're not going to tell us what we are going to do. And I think that's a really big factor in being able to overcome and do change. Is I'm like that too. And my mother tells me, I've been stubborn since the minute I came into the world. And I now say thank you instead of, what does that mean? I'm glad I was stubborn, because I'm now able to be that sassy, spicy girl that's like, yeah, no, I'm going to do what I want, how I want it. And no one's going to tell me how it's going to go. You have a choice. You don't have a choice on what you hear, but you have a choice on what you listen to and insert into your mind. And that is the difference. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of white noise, especially in the medical field. I can't tell you how many guests have said, the doctor said I'll never walk again. The doctor said I have 3 months to live. I have a guest that had breast cancer, and she named it Tilly the tumor. And she would tell Tilly the tumor how this thing's going and how it's not going. So I feel and resonate so much with what you're saying, and everything, we're going to simplify it if that's even possible. Everything is a choice. How we view it, how we react, what we listen to, what we keep inside of us, how we replay, how we move forward, how we change perspective. It's all a choice. And when you get into a point in life where you say, I have a choice, then things move forward for you. And I really believe that's the key to everything. So tell us where to find you. Tell us what you have going on. I think, do you have, I think we need to hear a book from you. I think we definitely need you to start writing, because I think your story is so impactful. So tell us where to find you. Tell us what you do to help others be able to have this resilience that you've found.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. I'm a motivational speaker now, a keynote speaker based in Vancouver, Canada, but I'm speaking all across the world remotely so far. Haven't done an in-person international trip yet, but I'm looking to do that this year if I can. You can find me at MacQueen.com, MacQueen, Dan.com. You see my demo reel there and what I talk about. Talks are like lighthearted but deep. Like they got deep cuts, but they're like a joking manner, like a dark sense of humor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what makes it
what
good.
You see this podcast here is like the stories are all like, they always have like a double-edged kind of meaning, and like I'll look at the light side of a dark situation and make cracks at it, because if you can't laugh at this, what can't you laugh at? Like I think looking at that perspective is so key, right?
Yeah.
I've got stories for every situation, and I've got like a great slide. A friend of mine who's a graphic designer has helped me build my deck, and the deck looks phenomenal, save for 1 or 2 slides, which I built myself. And they've got all these pictures on the slide. It's a cacophony of like images and differing textures and graphical cohesion. It's just an absolute dumpster fire, right? Each one of those pictures represents a story that I tell on stage, and it's kind of a bespoke to the group. I let them pick the adventure, if you would. I don't go through all of them because it would take like 3 hours to go through all of them, but I go through what they pick. And it's funny enough, Brussels sprouts is always the first one they pick, so this is a good story that we get off with. But I'm a speaker. You can find me online at MacQueenDan.com, and also MacQueenDan across all the socials. I'm on quite a few podcasts of late. I've been maybe on 20 or 30 podcasts, sharing stories, perspectives. I'm active on Instagram, MacQueenDan.com or MacQueenDan. And LinkedIn are probably the 2 best places to find me, or the website as well. But that's the best place to find me, Maureen. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. And you and I are going to connect on all social media, of course. And I'll have those links, listeners, for you in the show notes when we publish his episode. And I don't care if he's been on 20 or 30 podcasts. He's never been on one like ours, right? Wink, wink. Just saying. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Stay with me, Dan. And listeners, once again, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all of you that listen week to week, and the comments that I've been getting and the reviews we've been getting. We are all 5 stars on Apple, and that just shows me people need good stuff, good content, good stories, good people sharing their vulnerability stories and giving us hope and resilience and overcoming. And so again, I love you all for being here. Let's build this community, share this with your family and friends. Don't forget to little housekeeping stuff. Don't forget to go get my books at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Outskirts Press, as well as my website for coaching and self-esteem and relationship and dating coaching, all of the fun stuff at lifecoachmaureen.com. And the books, My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am, and My Dog is My Relationship Coach, of course, are available. And then last but not least, my dog is everything.net is our boutique where we make homemade healthy treats and lots of fun apparel and safety items for your furry babies. So love you all for being here. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week. Until then, take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Most of all, please take care of those furry babies. And please do not shop, but adopt. Love you all. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.